The ad had been simple: babysitter needed. We are four single mothers looking for a responsible babysitter to care for our four exceptionally bright 6-year-old children. No experience is required, but it is preferable. Please contact Julie Paracott, cell, and we'll discuss further. Please bring identification, and there is a no-phone rule. We want your attention to be 100% be on the safety and well-being of the children. We look forward to hearing from you. Please, no time wasters. You must have a genuine passion for children. I thought nothing of it. The house looked more like a building that was renovated into a home with its tall windows and spotlights. Even though the sun was only setting, the spotlights were on, shining bright lights at all corners. The place was in the middle of nowhere, sitting right next to a riverbank. Rolling down the window, I leaned out and hit the buzzer. Almost immediately, a camera flickered on, and I blinked at a woman peering back at me. She was a small brunette with pinched features and dark eyes. The woman didn't say anything, and she certainly didn't look like she would anytime soon, which was infuriating. I was already nervous, so seeing her made my stomach twist into knots. "Hi," I smiled brightly, thinking of the cash. "I'm Cass Stone. I'm supposed to babysit?" The woman seemed to perk up some, but she looked to have a permanent scowl on her face. She looked off somewhere to her right. "Jules, the babysitter is here." She raised an eyebrow at me. "She doesn't look very bright." "For the love of God, the intercom is on," another voice sounded. The woman with the scowl disappeared and another appeared. This one sounded familiar. It was the woman I'd spoken to on the phone a few hours earlier, sitting in Starbucks, sweating into my iced latte. "Are you Julie?" I asked through gritted teeth. The last thing I expected was to be insulted 2 seconds into arriving. "Yes, sorry about that. Come on through." A buzzer sounded, the camera turned off, and the gate opened. Trying to calm my breathing, I waited until the gates opened before driving through. I hadn't noticed the high fences when I'd pulled up, and that was in part due to the trees that littered the property. The fencing stood at least 9 feet tall, and a chill ran down my spine. The place reminded me of a prison. Parking quickly, I hopped out of my car and hurried to a mahogany door, which didn't look the least bit welcoming. There was an electronic keypad on the front, numbers glaring at me in writhing electric blue. Catching sight of myself in the reflection in the door, I tried to smile. They were just kids, I thought. I could deal with 4 little 6-year-olds for a night if that meant getting some serious cash for college. I considered knocking, but stopped myself when the door was pulled open. "Mara, for goodness sake, must we have this every single time it's time to take your pill?" The knot in my stomach loosened slightly when a tall blonde woman around my mother's age with a high ponytail bounded into view. She wore a floral dress, a baby pink cardigan slung over the top. In her arms was a smaller version of her, a little girl with golden curls held in 2 pigtails and a matching princess dress. The little girl was straining in her mother's arms, squirming and struggling, a frenzied look in her wide blue eyes. And then I saw why. Julie Paracott was holding a small white pill bottle. "Mara, stop," Julie said sternly. But the girl only struggled more, her bottom lip trembling. The woman settled me with a wide smile. "Cassandra, thank you so much for coming." She shifted the girl on her hip. "Sweetie, your new sitter's here. Why don't you say hi?" "No," the girl said softly. From the tone of her voice, she sounded on edge of a breakdown. I couldn't resist a giggle, however. The blonde girl was adorable. Julie chuckled. "This little nuisance is my daughter, Mary Belle. But call her Mara. It's currently pill time, so she's not in the greatest of moods." Mara. I mentally noted the name down. I nodded, smiling, suddenly giddy. I wasn't expecting the kids to be so cute. "Hi, Mara," I said brightly, and when the girl's eyes narrowed, I forced a laugh. "Are you Elsa today?" Mara didn't smile and nod like I expected her to, but she did fix me with an annoyed look. "Elsa has a blue dress," she said matter-of-factly, and I swore the little shit rolled her eyes. "This is pink." I guess I was sort of shocked by the girl's words. I understood the kids were smart for their age, but I could almost mistake the little girl's tone for condescending. Mara was staring at me, waiting for my reply, and I was hit with the urge to one-up the girl on her Disney princess knowledge because had been on the earth far longer than her. But I swallowed an exasperated sigh and nodded. I can't say I was good with kids. They annoyed the hell out of me, but I was desperate to keep a good impression. It's very pretty. Thanks, Mara said, but she still wasn't smiling. It felt like the little girl was studying me, squinting blue eyes burning into my own. Julie cleared her throat. Okay, Cassandra, why don't you come inside? The other children are in the lounge. I nodded enthusiastically. It's Cass, I said, but the rest of my words were interrupted by a small voice. Let her go. When I looked down, a little boy was standing on his tiptoes, straining to reach the woman, his small hands fisting the material of Julie's cardigan. He had olive skin and dark brown curls in different directions and wore a Spider-Man shirt and shorts. His determined eyes were bright green, glaring up at Julie, who sighed. It sounded like they'd had this interaction before, judging by the woman's eye roll. Noah, I'm just giving Mara her pill. You don't have to follow me around. The boy shook his head, a stray curl falling in his eyes. Let her go, he repeated in a squeak, tugging Julie's cardigan harder. Let Moira go. Julie sent me an apologetic look. Meet Noah, I guess. The boy's glare sharpened. Let Mari, he pulled a face. Murawa. Julie cleared her throat. Noah is still working on his pronunciation of Mary Bell, she explained, turning her attention to the small boy, her lips stretching into a wide smile. Sweetie, Mara is fine. I'm just giving her medicine, okay? She doesn't want to, he said softly, and Mara nodded her affirmation, straining to get away. Julie frowned at the children before her blue eyes hardened, though neither of them seemed fazed. She shot me another apologetic smile. All right, let's get Cass settled, and then I'll give you your pill. She let Mara down, and once the blonde was free, she grabbed Noah's hand, and the two of them sped off back into the house. Julie watched them go before straightening up. Sorry about that. Honestly, it's every single night, she laughed. You'd think they'd get used to it, right? I nodded, swallowing my questions. Julie hadn't told me about pills on the phone call I'd had with her. Julie's smile broadened. All right, enough dilly-dallying. Come on in. I was led into a huge foyer with a high ceiling and marble flooring. There was a sparkling chandelier hanging above and vibrant blue walls. It was homey. Though I couldn't help noticing there were no photos of the kids on the walls. Instead, there were paintings of brightly colored fruit. Keeping up with Julie, I hurried to follow her into a ridiculously modern kitchen that was constructed mostly of glass and metal. Compared to my parents' own prehistoric home, I was in awe. The kitchen was a designer's dream, glass counters lining the circumference, an oven, faucet, and dishwasher built in. Julie wandered over to the refrigerator, pulling it open. I got a glimpse of fruit and veg stuffed into compartments and multi-packs of water, but there was no sign of anything unhealthy. I inwardly groaned. Hopefully there was candy somewhere. I needed my candy. Every cupboard in the kitchen is child-locked. Julie handed me an electronic card before catapulting into a lecture my mother would be proud of. Use this to get in and out of everything, and please do not feed the kids anything that is not on the list I left in the lounge. That includes fizzy drinks, candy, or chocolate. They may have fruit juice, but only after bedtime. If given to them before then, they get hyper and are a nightmare to calm down. Though that's all in the guide. I compiled a step-by-step list of their routine, and if followed correctly, they'll be fine. As opposed to what? The thought struck me. The number of rules was giving me a headache, but I nodded at the correct times, showing I understood. I smiled my best smile, watching Julie flit around the kitchen like a frenzied butterfly. Feel free to use the kitchen as much as you'd like. Julie fixed me lemonade with ice and set it on the granite island sitting in the middle of the room. Nodding my thanks, I took a sip. It was refreshing. Something I needed. Julie gave me a quick tour, showing me where everything was. "I've fixed the children some ready-made meals in the refrigerator, so all you need to do is microwave them," Julie explained. "They may act up and ask for pizza, but I've strictly told them that it's a no-no. If they refuse to eat, they do not eat at all." "Oh." I nodded politely. My smile was straining. I must have looked confused because Julie Paracott fixed me with a steely look. "The kids suffer from an illness that makes them susceptible to disease. That's what the pill was that I was trying to give my daughter. If they don't take their pills, they'll break out with a rash and their lips will turn blue." The woman wasn't holding anything back. "To prevent putting our kids at risk, since they're allergic to quite a lot of things, we only give them food with no artificial colors or gluten. When they're well behaved, they're allowed pizza every year." "Every year?" I couldn't help spluttering out, and Julie nodded. "Homemade, of course," she finished. I took another sip of lemonade to stop myself from grilling her further. I hoped she wasn't one of those anti-vax parents. The drink stung my throat. Mrs. Paracott glanced at her watch. "Okay, we've got to get going in 20, so I'll quickly introduce you to Rory and Evelyn, and then I guess we'll leave you to it." The living room was sectioned off by a huge sofa that was positioned in front of an even large TV. A football game was being played on the screen, and I took note of a little boy with bright red hair and freckles splashed across his cheeks, watching it with rapt attention. Propped up against his side, her attention on a tablet in her lap, was a little girl with raven-colored hair. The two of them ignored me when I walked in with Julie, with Mara and Noah joining us, the latter of which still jerking at Julie's cardigan jacket, a scowl on his face. He had hold of Mara's hand, who also had a similar expression on her face. I'd never met a kid who looked at her mom like that. I might have questioned it, but the kids lived under a strict regime and had probably never heard of a popsicle. I made it my mission to introduce them. "Get your feet off the coffee table, Rory. It's glass, for God's sake. It'll scuff," Julie scolded, causing the red-headed boy to jump in surprise, his eyes, bright blue, widening as his head swiveled in their direction. "And what did I tell you about football, baby? You know you're not allowed to watch it." Mrs. Paracott strode forwards and snatched the remote from his lap, pointing it at the TV. The picture changed from a bright green field to what looked like Pingu. Rory whined in protest before he finally seemed to acknowledge me, and whatever he looked like he was going to say, he swallowed. Tugging at his crimson locks before rubbing his eyes, little Rory's lip trembled and L stiffened. Was I that scary looking? Weird, since I considered myself the least intimidating person on the planet. The boy didn't spend too much attention on me, however. Instead, he pouted at Mrs. Paracott. His eyes darkened. "I was watching that." The woman sighed. She didn't seem to be bothered by the boy's tone of voice, which was almost a growl. "We have a guest, honey. Meet your new sitter, Cass." The redhead's gaze slid to me, and I tried my best to smile. "Hi," he said. Once again, I detected something in his tone, sarcasm, before he turned back around, folding his arms across his chest with a huff. The little raven head looked up from her tablet and sent me a wide grin. "Hi," I waved shyly. "Hello, are you Evelyn?" The girl cocked her head, her lip curling. "Duh," she giggled. Next to her, Rory stopped pouting and joined in with a snort. My cheeks burned. Evelyn, amazingly, was enjoying my embarrassment, her green eyes sparkling. The girl seemed to size me up, her piercing eyes reminding me of one of the popular girls at school. But it was a goddamn 6-year-old, for God's sake. Evelyn nudged Rory with a snort. "She's funny." Rory nodded, smirking at me through curls hanging in his eyes. "That's enough, you two," Julie reprimanded. "What have I told you about being rude?" "Sorry, Julie," they chorused, exchanging secret smiles. Julie wandered off to do something or other, leaving me with the kids. I stood there awkwardly, wondering what to say. I had no idea how to interact with kids. I'd bullshitted my way through the initial phone call interview with Mrs. Paracott. Rory went back to watching Pingu, but from the look on his face, he'd completely zoned out. Noah joined Evelyn, trying to grab the tablet off of her. And Mara, to my surprise, rushed over to me, swiping golden ringlets from her eyes. She was clutching a book, and I exaggerated a grin, recognizing the cover. "Oh, Tangled. I love that movie." Mara nodded and dropped the book on my lap with far too much force. She stabbed the brightly colored cartoon-like Rapunzel with her index. "Her mommy locked her in a tower." I nodded. "Yes, but she was saved by the prince, remember?" I pointed at her mess of golden curls. "Look, you've got her hair." The girl didn't smile. Her eyes locked onto me. "Her mommy locked her in a tower," she repeated with another stab. My smile grew strained. What was the kid's problem? "Yes, but she got her happily ever after, didn't she? Hey, look how pretty her hair is." I hurried to change the subject and pointed to the princess with the biggest smile I could muster, and Mara gave me a long, withering look before stamping her foot. I couldn't help flinching. Her mommy locked her in a tower. The little girl suddenly screamed in my face. Mara's eyes were brimming with tears, and she was stabbing the cover repeatedly. She was distressed, and I was at a loss at what to do. "Her mommy locked her in a tower." I was speechless. I struggled to speak, but I couldn't tear my gaze from the small girl's burning eyes. The other three had stopped what they were doing, and they were watching silently. "Mara, sweetie, you know Tangled scares you." Julie swept back into the room, pulling the book from the girl's hands. But the blonde didn't cry or scream. She stared hard at the floor, clenching her fists tightly. I wanted to say something to her, but what could I possibly say? Except I didn't have a chance. The other moms appeared, a woman with short, vibrant red hair and a kind smile, and another who I knew was Evelyn's mother the second she hurried into the room. She had her daughter's silk dark hair cascading down her back. They were introduced as Laura Mason and Becca Livingston, both of them also doctors, like Mrs. Paracott. Julie quickly explained that the three of them were university professors at the local college, though something was bugging me. The women looked oldish. They were at least in their late 40s. How late had they had their kids? "All right, you little shits. Time for your pills." Another woman joined them, the one from the intercom, though I was unsure of her name or whose mother she was. Julie and the others hurried around, getting ready. The nameless woman held up a white pill bottle. "Line up." Reluctantly, they did. She made them swallow a small blue capsule before downing a glass of water. When it came to Noah, he shook his head, and the woman shook her head with a chuckle. "Baby?" She gripped his shoulders, and the boy winced. He wouldn't meet eyes with her. "You need to take your pill. If you don't, you'll get sick. Do you want that?" Noah didn't say anything. Mara hovered near him, eyes wide. Rory and Evelyn made a huge deal of the pill tasting bad. I noticed a pattern. All four weren't the greatest fans of their parents. When Laura, the redhead, wrapped her arms around her son, he flinched away. I watched Noah slip the pill into his mouth and pull a face, swallowing it down, before sticking his tongue out in disgust. Noah's mother came over to me and dumped the pill bottle in my hand. 9 p.m., sweetie," she said, unsmiling. "Got that?" "Yes, of course." Julie hurried back in, pulling on a bleached white lab coat. "Okay, we'll be back around 11. Remember, refer to the guide I left you if you're unsure what to do, and have fun." I was pretty sure my cheeks were going to split open from smiling so much. "Yep." I followed the moms to the door and watched them leave, before shutting the door behind me and leaning against it with a staggered breath. When there was a soft whimper, Mara was back, peering up at me. I bit back a groan. I wasn't ready to deal with another breakdown. "Hey, Mara," I smiled widely. "What is it?" The blonde opened her mouth to speak, before seemingly deciding against it, and turning and hurrying back to the others. When Elle wandered back into the lounge, Noah was already grabbing my hand and pulling me to the fancy coffee table where a piece of paper and pile of crayons were. "Help me draw?" I knelt next to the boy. "Of course. What would you like to draw? A dragon, maybe?" He shook his head. Nope. Well, what do you want to draw? Noah didn't answer. I watched him grab a red crayon and begin to write something, scrawling it across the page in huge letters. H-E-L-P. Something cold slithered down my spine. I had to blink rapidly to see if I was seeing things. My breath was short when I looked at the boy, and he was glaring at me, his teeth gritted. I forced a laugh. He was playing with me, surely. Instead of questioning it, I cleared my throat and praised his writing skills. They were good for a 6-year-old. Noah let out a frustrated hiss and jumped up, grabbing the drawing and screwed it up before storming out of the room. Hey! I shouted after him. I was ready to follow him, but then I noticed the TV had been switched over. Mara was curled up on the sofa with the remote clutched in her small hands, blue eyes glued to the screen. The TV show wasn't a colorful kids' show. It wasn't Pingu. In fact, I recognized it. One of my friends had been obsessed with it a few years ago. The TV show was Criminal Minds. I could tell from the intro. Hissing out a breath, I rushed over to grab the remote off the blonde. Mara, that's not very appropriate, I managed to choke out. Which was true. The scene the girl was watching was graphic. There was far too much blood. But Mara didn't look scared. If anything, she looked intrigued. I swiped for the remote, but the girl shook her head, pulling it back. Mommy lets me watch it. I shook my head. No, Mara. It's an adult program. It's inappropriate. But the girl didn't hold up. Look in the guide. I did. After flipping through pages of allergy warnings, I found the TV section. 1. Rory is not allowed to watch football under any circumstances. 2. Mara may watch 2 episodes of Criminal Minds, no more than 2.3. If Noah asks to watch a film you do not know the name of, do not put it on, i.e., Inception. I closed the manual. It didn't make sense that Julie Paracott, who only allowed her daughter to eat pizza every year, would let Mara watch a show like Criminal Minds. In the end, I was powerless to stop Mara watching it. I busied myself making the kids' meals, though there were little things that were starting to get to me. The Tangled book and Criminal Minds stood out until I checked up on the kids and caught Rory and the unmistakable flash of fire. The boy's eyes were lit up orange in the glow of the flame, and he was staring down at a piece of paper he'd set alight. He wasn't wafting it, and he didn't look scared. He was just staring at it. This time I did lose it a little. Where did you get matches? I searched the boy, but he just smiled brightly, running out of the room. The little shit. After looking everywhere, I gave in, and Rory joined in watching Criminal Minds. Evelyn, despite being the brattiest out of them, was quiet. When I peeked at what the girl was doing on her tablet, I did a double take. The girl was on the Urban Outfitters website, scrolling through brightly colored dresses. I couldn't resist a laugh, and the girl twisted around to frown at me. What? Nothing. I wore my plastic smile. Evelyn, wouldn't you rather look at the kids section? I pointed at the screen where a bright green bikini was being flaunted by a model. I don't think you'll fit that. It was supposed to be a joke, but Evelyn's eyes widened and her bottom lip wobbled. She turned back to the tablet, tears trickling down her cheeks. My heart sank at her expression. Don't make her cry. Rory's voice startled me, and I looked up to find the boy staring at me. His lip was curled. If you make her cry, you'll regret it. What? I pressed. Rory, that's not very nice. He scoffed and turned away. Bitch. I thought I'd misheard, but from the look on his face, I'd heard perfectly. I was about to chastise him, and then I noticed Noah hadn't returned from his tantrum. Eyeing the two of them, I struggled not to scream in frustration. Where's Noah? Neither of them answered, and after searching almost every room on the ground floor, I finally found him in the downstairs bathroom. Noah, are you okay? My stomach turned at sight of the small brunette bent over the faucet. When he didn't reply, I rushed forwards. What are you? And then I stopped when I glimpsed 4 tiny blue pills in the faucet. They'd spat them out. Of course they had. "Noah, why did you do that?" I asked softly, my heart in my throat. I felt around in my pocket for the pill bottle, Mrs. Pericott's words echoing in my mind. She'd said the kids would get sick if they didn't take the pill, but little Noah looked fine. The others downstairs, if they'd followed suit, were also okay. So why the hell were the parents so insistent on them taking it? "Noah," I forced myself to be stern. "You have to take your pill, honey." "No," he said, and then he turned to face me. "No, I don't." "Why not?" Elle flinched when the boy jerked his head to the side, and the door behind me slammed shut. My stomach slithered into my toes, but I shook away the thought. The wind, I thought. Surely. But inside? What? Before I could question him further, a scream rang out from downstairs. My heart jumped into my throat. Mara. "Stay there!" I managed to get out before practically diving downstairs. I knew I should have turned off that damn TV show. But when I skidded into the lounge, the girl was still sitting there watching TV. The blonde turned to look at me with questioning eyes, and maybe a little irritated because apparently I'd interrupted Criminal Minds. Evelyn and Rory were looking at something on the girl's tablet. After double-checking things were okay, I rushed back to Noah. Except when I was back in front of the bathroom, when I tried to yank it open, it was locked, and a grunt sounded from the other side. A much older grunt. "Don't come in!" The voice was unmistakably a teenage boy, and my hand stiffened around the handle. "Hey!" My voice was trembling. "Who the hell are you? I'm calling the cops." I pounded on rich mahogany, throwing myself against the door. "Noah, honey, are you okay? Who's in there with you?" Maybe it was an older sibling I didn't know about, I thought hysterically. When the door finally slid open, I had dived in, ready to grab anything discernible as a weapon. I expected some creep with his arms around little Noah. Instead, though, Noah was gone, and I was staring at a teenage boy, at least 16 or 17. My age. Something acidic climbed my throat when I realized the boy was wearing the same Spider-Man shirt and shorts. The shirt was stretched over a much older torso, sticking to flushed-looking skin and exposing the majority of his lower half, while the shorts were practically glued to his waist. I was searching for Noah, but there only the scowling teenage boy. I held my breath, and the boy glared back. He jerked his head, but this time the door didn't move. "You have 10 seconds. I tripped over my words, trying to sound stern and responsible, but I was terrified. "You have 10 seconds to explain yourself, or I'm calling the cops." The boy cocked his head, blowing clumps of hair out of his eyes. "Isn't it obvious?" He stepped forward and pulled something out of his pocket, unraveling it with exaggerated force. I recognized it automatically. The crayoned word "Little Noah" had scrawled across in huge letters, taking up the whole page. The boy folded his arms and settled me with an all too familiar glower which I recognized. "Why didn't you listen to my goddamn drawing?"